These were all done in an hour, so I'm not expecting perfection. They're studies. This process was about building a habit and getting good, easy wins and figuring out what works for me and what doesn't. And I surprised myself. This is the first one. Looking at it, like, there's a fair amount of like color shifting and like good turning of forms, but in terms of like brushwork, it's not wonderful. I picked a black and white dog because I was like, let's pick something that's not going to push me too hard. And I wanted to be able to get an easy win. And so this was my choice for easy win. And my spouse was so happy because he loves any sort of brachycephalic dog. The next one was a cat. And this one, I think, wasn't quite as successful. I had trouble getting enough paint down. I felt like the proportions were a little bit off, but I did get to do whiskers, and I love whiskers. Oh my gosh, they're so much fun. Especially like when you're working alla prima, you can scratch the whiskers in and they bring so much life into the painting. And then the next one that I painted is a Bengal. This one, I really wish I had been able to get more paint down. I struggled with this one. This one was a rough one. Anytime there's like a bunch of markings or patterns or whatever, it can be really, really hard to get those and the values correct at the same time. I picked this because I thought it had really beautiful eyes and I wanted to paint those eyes. The last one I did is a border collie, and I feel like the difference between this one and the first one is like night and day in terms of sophistication. There's things that I don't love about it, but I feel like I had a lot of fun scratching more whiskers in this. I got good dimensionality. Week 2 rolled around and some interesting stuff happened in this week. The first one I did was a long-haired, I think it's a Scotty puppy, if I'm correct. It's not my favorite. I feel like I got the proportions and the tilt of the head look pretty good. I wish that its eyes were better. I wish that it was a little bit more soulful, but the nose looks good. Playing a little bit with the fur on the edges was nice. After that first week, when I was having some proportion problems and I was really struggling with those cats, I was like, okay, where's a good spot to work on that? How can I spend a little bit of time challenging myself to get better in a particular area? And so I picked a Sphinx cat, and it's a gray Sphinx cat. So, you know, all of the color shifts and things like that can happen inside of the gray, but there's not a big pattern or anything difficult like that. It's really like, can you get this structure correct? Can you get a likeness? Does it feel good? And I like the way that it turned out. I think that I got some nice soft edges. I didn't get too tight anywhere, which was nice. And I feel like the eyes look pretty good. The next one after that was another cat, but this cat has fur. Is it a British short hair? I can't remember. I picked this cat because it also doesn't have a whole lot of pattern, and its orange eyes were so beautiful. This cat looked so soft. I wanted it to look like you could touch it, and I really like the way that the underlighting came on that jaw on the other side. This painting was such a turning point for me. You hear this phrase in painting, and that is to not lose your drawing. Don't lose your drawing, don't lose your drawing. What they're saying is don't lose the structure of the thing that you're painting. Don't let the paint make you lose what makes this what it is. And while I didn't finish this painting as much as I would have liked, and it's not as sophisticated or as lovely as I would like it to be, I feel like this was a really good moment where I realized what they meant by that. When you have a lot of wrinkles, you can lose them really, really easily, and they're so important to the structure and the expression of the animal. So I'm so happy that I did it. As we move on into week 3, the thing that you are going to notice in this one is that I was able to pull in more background and be a little bit looser with some of my work. Forgive me, I don't remember what kind of dog this is. I think it's like some sort of spaniel. I'm happy mostly with how this one turned out. What was happening during this process is I was actually tweaking my split palette that I use, and I wanted my paintings to have good browns, and I was really struggling with my browns. They kept turning sort of purple, which is not what I wanted. One of the things that I made sure to do this week of paintings is find animals that had brown in them to test out my new color palette and see if it could handle and pull off what I was hoping for. I don't keep raw umber or burnt umber on my palette. I may add it in the future, but I wanted to be able to make a good brown. I'm glad that I did it. It shows progress. The next one I did was this sweet little cat, some sort of American short hair. She's just got the sweetest little face. I loved the freckle on her nose. Do I wish the proportions on this were a little bit better? Yes. Do I wish the background was a little bit better? Also, yes. I think I've got some nice soft edges on the lighter side of the face, and the whiskers are cute, and it's not atrocious. I keep talking about whether something's good or bad. They're studies. It doesn't really matter if it's good or bad, but there's still things that can be learned from it, and I can pay attention to what was successful and what wasn't. So this was one of those where I wanted to catch that sort of sweet expression, that sort of like innocent little puppy face, and to play a little bit with longer fur. You're going to see that brown. I wanted to get a good kind of chestnutty brown, a nice dark brown, while still being able to play with warm and cool. I learned a whole lot while doing this, and I still think it's very cute. I'm pleased with how it turned out. The last one is this cat. Cats so often, especially one like this, they can have such complicated patterns. And this cat, has the tabby markings on its head, but it also has those shifts of brown and gray and white and cream. This one I definitely struggled with a little bit, and you can see that there's not as much definition. It's not as clean around the eyes and the features as I would like. But I'm happy with the whiskers. I'm happy with some of the fur texture on the chest. I think looks really, really nice. And then we get into the last week. The last week, I think every single one of them has a sophistication that the earlier ones didn't. The first one is a Pomeranian in I think it's a Pomeranian, gosh. Fairly certain this is a Pomeranian, in a field. And I really, really liked the light on its face. I brought in a little bit of foliage in the background. I feel like the background is expressive, not belabored, gets the point across, but isn't too much. I tried to get a good fur texture. I think there's some good color temperature stuff, especially that reflection of the sky in the dog's eyes. I think that blue that you get on any of those dark surfaces, any wet surfaces like nose and eyes, seeing that little bit of blue when it's outside helps bring it into its environment, which I love. By this point in the process, I had figured out that this was working, and I was in the home stretch and I felt amazing about it. I was so happy. The next one is this black and white cat. I brought back black and white. I wanted to see how far I had come in black and white. And I feel like this one, the eyes are good. I feel like there's some fun color temperature shifts in the muzzle and the chest. I had some blending stuff that I was dealing with, but all in all, I think that it's still perfectly charming, and I'm glad that I did it. The next one is a white cat that had a red sort of fabric background, and I loved the way that the colors from the background reflected up into the fur. And so I wanted that complication and that interest there. The cat is sort of behind the fabric, but I don't think that I communicated that as well as I would have liked to, but the fabric is not the subject. And I would do this differently in the future. But I love the temperature shift, that blue that's under the jaw and all of the warmth that you get on the right side of the face. The eyes are nice and soulful, but they're not taking over. They're not too much. Even if it's not perfect, there was some really, really good stuff here. And the very last painting in this series is a husky. I picked a husky because, again, it's a black and white situation with lots of opportunity for color shift. I love huskies. Gosh, they're loud. They need a whole lot of stimulation and exercise, but they are beautiful. They're so pretty. So I wanted to paint this very majestic and sophisticated boy. I really, really like the color shifts that I was able to get in here. This is one of those paintings where if you look at my brush strokes, there's not a lot of paint going down. There's enough paint because it's a white animal. And I feel like I just put down the strokes. And I think this happened a lot in these last little bits where I wasn't going over the same spot over and over and over again. Richard Schmidt would call it licking your painting, which is gross. I just put down the paint. And I felt like this one came out really, really nicely. I'm pretty pleased with this. It was hard to sit down and do this one because I'm like, this is the last one. Don't fuck it up. Don't fuck it up. So I was so scared when I sat down to paint this, but I did it anyway, and here it is, and I actually like it. I'm so glad I did it. If you want to see the other video about how I did this process, it is linked over in the corner, and I will see you in the video.